The Federal Reserve reducing interest rates by an expected quarter point to a new range of 3.5 to 3.75. There were 3 dissents. The first time that's happened since September 2019. 2 were against the cut, including Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee, along with Kansas City Fed President Jeff Smith, his second dissent in a row. Also, another dissent for a 50 basis point cut from new Fed Governor on loan from the administration, Stephen Myron. To recap, the vote was 9 for cutting a quarter, 2 against cutting, 1 for cutting 50 basis points. The Fed signaled a higher bar for the next cut using language.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me here on the show. So I think what's really important to understand is that we are doing a limited pilot program that has important guardrails that are in place because we've seen with the events that have happened on offshore exchanges that it's more important than ever that Americans deserve safe U.S. markets under U.S. regulations. So what we've done to structure this pilot program is that if you are using a CFTC broker, which is what are our futures commission merchants, those are registered by us, those are overseen by us and the National Futures Association, which is like FINRA, you will be able to use Bitcoin, Ether, and USDC to collateralize contracts that are denominated in those Bitcoin, Ether, or USDC. And it's basically in-kind collateral, so that's very limited in what you can do. You can't use it instead of cash, for example, but you can use it to collateralize those in-kind contracts. And then we are putting into place enhanced monitoring.
Just to clarify, it's in-kind, so Bitcoin for Bitcoin, or could it be Bitcoin for Ethereum?
Bitcoin for Bitcoin. So if you're going to settle in Bitcoin, it's denominated in Bitcoin, you can collateralize it with Bitcoin because it's the same way risk. And we have enhanced CFTC monitoring and reporting in place. So for 3 months, we are requiring that we not only get weekly position and asset class reporting, that's on top of the normal reporting that our exchanges do, but we are also asking for a reporting of any significant operational issues relating to that digital asset collateral. So again, this is a safe way to understand the technology, to understand the uses for these assets, but in a controlled way.
What does the upside at this moment look like to you, and what does the downside in this moment look like to you?
You know, I feel like we put in a pretty strong base of support around here. There's an incredible amount of leverage coming out of the system, a lot of liquidation. A lot of the OG holders were selling at the $100,000 level. And so I'm fairly comfortable at this level. I would think that we'll build from this base and we'll rally from here. Obviously, it's hard to make a forecast for the end of the year right now, given what's happened over the past few weeks, and especially the shift in the macro environment. But, you know, as you know, my view is Bitcoin's going to outperform gold. It's going to outperform the S&P. It is digital capital. And so if you're a long-term investor, this is the place to be.
Ripple's US dollar-backed stablecoin has also officially been recognized as an accepted fiat-referenced token by Abu Dhabi's Financial Services Regulatory Authority, essentially paving the way for authorized institutions to use it for regulated financial activity within ADGM. Well, let's get more on this. Reese Merrick is here. He is the Managing Director, Middle East and Africa at Ripple, joining me around the desk in Abu Dhabi. Reese, welcome to the program. Good to have you on today.
Hi, Dan. Great to be here.
First and foremost, what does this approval actually allow Ripple to do that you couldn't do before?
I mean, firstly, what this does, it further validates kind of Ripple's value proposition here in the region and a compliance-first approach as it relates to issuing our own stablecoin, RLUSD, the back end of last year. And really what it allows and gives comfort to do is for ADGM licensed entities to be able to utilize RLUSD within their flows, within their operations, which is a great step forward for Ripple, great step forward for the region.
Significant step forward for the region. And as I just mentioned, we have seen Abu Dhabi and the UAE becoming a real hub for digital assets. So the fast track of this approval is something to celebrate. But at the same time as well, I want to understand what it means for the business, because within the stablecoin sector, what we see is USDT, USDC really dominating this industry right now. Of course, both much larger and more widely used. So what differentiates RLUSD from those other major players, and what can your stablecoin do that they can't?
Firstly, if we take a step back, I would say that when we were looking to enter this market, what we wanted to do is come with a compliant regulatory first approach, which is why we went essentially to the gold standard of regulators with the New York Department of Finance, who regulate the issuance of RLUSD the back end of 2024. What it means, though, is, when you look at the stablecoin market, sits at around $300 billion today. You notably kind of pointed out the two that kind of dominate in that space at the moment. But we believe this market is going to be, moving into the trillions. We think it's going to be a big market, and there's share for everyone. What I would say is kind of how we're looking to differentiate from a Ripple perspective is we want to be able to be the gold standard for institutions to adopt this stablecoin. We've made a couple of acquisitions this year where RUSD will play a big role. G-Treasury, a treasury management solution that essentially sees how Fortune 500 businesses are moving trillions of dollars between their own operations. And I can tell you that since we have made that announcement of acquisition, we're having so much inbound where we're seeing real institutions looking to do the benefits of what RLUSD can provide to their business operations.
Just on scale, RLUSD has about 1.2 billion in circulation, as I understand it. That's tiny compared to Tether, which has about 120 billion. So how do you compete in a market where scale is everything?
Absolutely. I think again, Ripple started as a payment institution in terms of providing technology. We've since gone down the licensing route. We were actually earlier this year approved as the first blockchain-enabled payment solution provider in the DFSA, which is great. We've done $95 billion in terms of turnover through our payment product, which utilizes XRP and the XRP ledger. So really, we're looking at how we can solve real-world utility for cross-border payments, and we see RLUSD as a natural step there. We were getting a lot of demand from our customers to make payouts in stablecoins, so naturally it fits within our current flow, and we do see the scale as it comes on. We look at another acquisition, Hidden Road, now Ripple Prime, who are also in the ADGM. They turn over $3 trillion in prime brokerage. Again, we're looking to incorporate RLUSD into those flows. So we're seeing through our acquisitions, through our existing payment business, that the flow and the scale will come for RLUSD as well.
Two things really emerged for me. Number one is there's still a huge lack of understanding about how this industry works and why it exists. And then number two, huge gaps in trust as well, Reece. So what are you doing to address those issues, not just to improve the understanding of the stablecoin industry, but to make sure that people can actually believe in its utility?
I think first and foremost, trust is paramount. And that's why, as I mentioned before, getting approved by the regulator NYDFS certainly cements that trust with other regulators like the ADGM, like the DFSA, to firstly approve RLUSD as a stablecoin to be used within their ecosystems. I think as well, when you look at it, cross-border payments flow, I think 50% of all payments are made in dollars, right? So a lot of those payments, do not actually go to the US. So therefore, it's quite inefficient and slow for payments to be made through the traditional channels. We believe that with the right regulation, with the right coverage and governance, and certainly how we're operating, the trust can be built in order to make and have real utility. And we actually, you mentioned before, every conversation has been dominated around stablecoins. I think that when these large financial institutions, these large corporates start to see the benefits of their business, they're certainly going to see that kind of hockey stick growth here.
What's your message to the global banks and the fintechs then, as they see this industry continuing to evolve? And of course, regulators, the more forward-thinking regulators, also actively looking to ensure that the development of this ecosystem continues to move forward.
Look, I think there's no bank, financial institution, payment entity that is not thinking, talking, or incorporating a stablecoin strategy. And quite frankly, if they're not, they will get left behind. I think that we've certainly seen a lot of interest, not only in the region, globally. The Genius Act in the US has really allowed and paved the way for some of the largest global financial institutions to play in this space. And I think you'll see a continuation of that.